Hey guys, we're going to continue with chapter 7, talking about polynomials. If you remember our last section, we were talking about foiling polynomials, so multiplying our binomials together. So we're going to continue this section. It's lesson 7.3. We're going to continue this section with multiplying binomials, but we're multiplying special circumstances of binomials. So we have special products of polynomials, and we're going to talk about two different ways that we can do this. Our first one is to square the binomial pattern. Okay, so we're going to take a binomial. We have a binomial. It's the same binomial, and we're going to square it. So essentially, we're saying a plus b times a plus b. Okay, so if we were to FOIL this like we learned, we would do first, so a squared. We would do outside, so plus ab. We would do inside, so plus ab. And then we would do last, which would give us b squared. So if I add my like terms together, I would get a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Okay, so that's if we FOIL it. But if you look, our rules tell us that if we take a plus b squared, we can just simple it out as you're going to square your first number, you're going to square your last number, and you're going to have 2 of your numbers combined. Okay, so you're going to have 2 of your numbers multiplied in the middle. So it's essentially saying a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Okay, the same way works if you have a minus sign in the middle. If you have a minus b squared, you're still going to square your first letter. So we're still going to start with a squared. We're still going to take 2 and then multiply our numbers together. We're going to multiply all that together. Okay, and then we're going to have our b squared, our last number squared, except you're going to have a minus sign here in front of your middle term instead of a plus term. So whatever your sign is here, that's your sign before your second term. Okay, so let's do a couple of practice problems. So on our practice problems, we have 3x plus 4 squared. So remember, your formula tells us it's going to turn into a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So I like to go ahead and get my a squared and my b squared taken care of. Okay, so I'm going to have 3x squared. And remember, I'm taking my square and I'm distributing it in. So that's going to turn to 9x squared. So there's my a squared. Okay, I just took care of my a. Let's do our b squared now. So now our b squared is going to be here. So let's label this a. B squared. We're going to have 4 squared, which equals 16. And then for my middle right here, I'm going to take 2 times my a, which is 3x, times my b, which is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply all my numbers together. So I'm going to get 2 times 3 times 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. Can't forget my x. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and get this written into standard form. So if I get it written into standard form, here's my first one. Here's my second one. And here's my third one. So I'm going to say 9x squared plus 24x plus 16. Remember, these are all plus signs because our sign in the middle of our binomial was a plus sign. So I have my a squared. I have my 2ab and I have my b squared. Okay, let's move on to our next problem. We have 5x minus 2y, and that is all to the second power. Okay, so again, I have a squared. This time I have a minus sign in the middle here. So I'm going to say minus 2ab plus b squared. So a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. Okay, so let's go ahead and start filling it in. A squared. A squared is going to be right here. So we're going to have 5x squared. B squared is going to be right here. So it's going to be 2y squared. And then remember, our middle number is 2ab. So we're going to take 2 times a times b. Okay, so now if I multiply all of these out, I'm going to get 25x squared, 4y squared. And then I'm going to have 2 times 5, which is 10. 10 times 2, which is 20. So 20. And then my variables, x, y. Remember these. This one is a plus sign. Because I have a minus sign here, this one's going to be a minus sign. So in standard form, this is going to be written out 25x squared minus 20xy plus 4y squared. A squared minus 2ab plus b squared. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more practice problems over those, just so we can make sure that we have a good understanding of what's going on. Let's start with 2a plus b squared. Remember, we have a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with our a squared. Our a squared is right here, so we're going to say 2a squared. I'm going to go ahead and work this out. 2a squared is going to give me 4a squared to the second power. Okay? Now we're going to move on to our b squared. Our b is right here, so we're going to have b squared. That's just going to stay b squared. And then we'll go to our middle. We're going to go 2 times a, which is 2a, times b, which is b. Okay? So I'm going to take 2 times 2, which is 4. And then I'm going to have my variables multiplied together. So 4ab. Remember, if this sign right here is a plus, then our first sign is going to be a plus. Our second sign is always going to stay a plus. So we're going to have 4a squared plus 4ab plus b squared. Let's do one more example. Let's do negative 12 minus n squared. Okay, now since I have my minus sign here, I'm going to have a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. Let's start with our a squared. So we're going to have negative 12 squared, which is going to turn into negative 12 times negative 12, which is going to be a positive 144. Next, let's do our b squared. So I'm going to have n. So n squared, that's just going to stay n squared. And then we're going to do our negative 2ab. Okay, so we're going to say 2 times a, which is negative 12, times b, which is n. Now, this is where things are going to get kind of tricky. So we want to make sure that we keep our negative sign with our 12. Okay, we cannot lose track of that. It has to stay glued to the 12 the whole time. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and multiply 2 times negative 12 which is going to give me negative 24n. Okay? Now remember, this sign right here is a negative because I have a negative inside. And this sign right here always stays a positive. But now this is where we need to look. I have two negative signs here. So those two negative signs are going to turn into a positive sign. So written in standard form, this is going to be 144 plus 24n plus n squared. Those negatives, make sure we don't lose track of that. They have to turn into a positive. Okay, that's all I had for our square of a binomial pattern. Okay, so remember a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, or a minus 2ab plus b squared. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to move on to the sum and difference pattern. Okay, so this is whenever we have the same numbers in our binomials, but one is a positive sign, one is a minus sign. Okay, they're simply going to turn to a squared minus b squared. Okay, but I'm going to show you why. So let's start with x plus 3 and x minus 3. Okay, so let's say I FOIL these out. I'm going to take my first, so x squared, times my outsides, so minus 3x, times my insides, so plus 3x, times my last, which is negative 9. Okay, so I'm going to combine my like terms. So that's going to give me x squared, a negative 3 plus 3 is 0, so that's going to go away. So I'm going to have x squared minus 9, which is the same thing as saying a squared minus b squared, so 3 squared. Okay, so instead of working this all out and FOILing it out, we can just know, based on our sum and difference pattern, that our answer is going to come to a squared minus b squared. Okay, so here we have t plus 5 times t minus 5. Okay, so we have the same a's and we have the same b's. So I'm going to take my a squared. Okay, so t squared. And then I'm going to take my b squared, which is 5 squared. And now I'm going to put my minus sign in the middle of it. And so it's going to turn to t squared minus 5 squared, which is 25. Okay, so this is really a very simple process. We're just going to take our a's, square them, that's our first, put a minus sign in there, take our b's, square them, that's our last number. Okay, so we're going to take our a's, 3x, and we're going to square it. Remember, we're taking the whole term and squaring it. So we're going to take our squared and we're going to distribute it. So we're going to say 9x squared. And then we're going to take our b's and square them. So I'm going to have y squared, which is just going to stay y squared. And then I'll always have a minus sign in the middle because I only have one minus sign in my problem. One minus sign, one negative sign always gives me another minus sign. Okay, so I have 9x squared minus y squared. Okay, so we're going to do this last equation real quick. We're going to take our a's. Our a's are our x's. So we're going to say x squared. And then we're going to have our b's, which are our 10s. And we're going to say 10 squared. So if I write this out in a standard form, I'm going to end up with x squared minus 100. Okay, guys, remember, shoot me an email if you have any questions. Make sure that you get your practice problems done that I've assigned to you in Google Classroom. I will see you guys tomorrow in our Google Meet. Again, shoot me an email if you guys have any questions, and we will see you soon.